This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for the rest, the food, fellowship. Thank you for Constantine, and thank you for Vicky. Teach us this morning, we pray in Christ's name. Keep us safe as we walk. Keep our hearts open. And Lord, I pray for the opportunity to glorify you in all that we say. Amen.
It's going to be a long walking tour, but we will have several stops in the meantime in order to see some monuments and discuss on those. So now the plan is, they're the local residents here of the square. The plan is to walk through two marketplaces, one which is very modern and sophisticated, and another one which is traditional. And then we will walk further up to the Agora, the ruins of the Agora, where we will have our first group meeting again for our teaching. It's the place that we can directly associate to Paul's presence. Here to Paul's stay, the ruins of the Agora, both ancient and Roman. You will see it written in both forms. And then we will continue our walk through the city center, passing by two major churches of 7th and 9th century after Christ. We will have a break at that second church, Hagia Sophia. It is located at a big square with several cafes and bakery and pastry shops around. So you will have like 30 minutes, 40 minutes for you to sit down somewhere, refill your batteries with a cup of espresso. And then we will continue to Rotunda, which is one of the most majestic, I believe, monuments that Thessaloniki can show, with magnificent mosaics at its interior. Then it's the White Tower, the most iconic monument. And then it's the Archaeological Museum that has two collections, two principal collections. One has to do with the antiquities from the Greek and the Roman days. So we will get an idea of what Thessaloniki was during the times of Paul, a little bit before, a little bit after. And it also has a special collection that is titled The Gold of Macedonia, where we will see mostly jewelry, and we will discuss about the techniques of working with gold and several other golden artifacts that we have found in this region. If I know that a city is always very vibrant, it's not an archaeological site where the only living person is you. A city is it's a completely different experience, a walking tour. So if something catches your attention, just let me know, because we will focus both on historical things, but if something pops up in our way, we will definitely comment on that as well. We're a much smaller group than the others, much more flexible and more fun, I believe. So let's start this way, here to the left. But another quick stop. As you see, we're walking on Aristotle Street, Aristotelus, which, unlike the other squares that you may be familiar with, is quite elongated. That's why we have all those parallel streets and avenues to the waterfront. It doesn't have this ordinary square or rectangular plan. And it's interesting to know that Thessaloniki suffered a very big and destructive fire in 1917. So if you walk in the city, you're gonna encounter two different cities in one. So from that point and onwards that way, that area was heavily affected by the fire. That's why we have some small monuments of many different periods scattered around here and there, but the urban layout and the plan is very clear. It's that rectangular grid that we have in other cities, intersections, 90-degree angles, and so on. If you go further up to the hill, as you see, and to the east. Then you will find alleys that seem like a maze, narrow streets. Architecture is significantly different. I mean, it's architecture of 18th and 19th century. And that's because that area, the further north, further up you move, the fire didn't attack, didn't destroy those places. You will see also that you get another feeling of what Thessaloniki was before 1917. It's the big fire of 1917. It was middle August. It started from a neighborhood somewhere around the port, near the port, that way. And because of the seasonal winds, back then the neighborhoods were literally packed. The density of houses, of huts, of people was very high. The attention given was minimal from the local authorities. So within a few hours, it had spread across the city. We're talking about 70% of the city destroyed. That translates into 10,000 houses, approximately 70,000 people, with the majority, with all three religious communities. We will discuss about this cultural diversity of Thessaloniki. So we have both Christians, Jewish, and Muslims affected by that fire. They had to be relocated. And the main reason why that fire wasn't put out right away, it's that don't forget that we're talking about World War One period. It's 1917. We have the British and the French troops here, and they have all water deposits reserved for their army, for their troops. So the locals don't have access to those water tanks and deposits. And since we were talking about the poorer neighborhoods, they didn't pay that much attention as it should be. So it quickly spread across the city, and the city had to be redesigned practically after World War One. And there was an architect brought here, Ernest Ebrar, his name, who designed the city. Designed that city that you experience right now, with those big squares, the intersections, the openings. Dogfight. He's the smart guy. He lives. He knows. The fire. Yes, it was two. I mean, the press said that it was two Greek women, boiling hot water in order to do the laundry. And one of the spikes of the fire fell onto went to the roof. Okay, let's move that way. That's why it immediately caught fire. It was that boiling water and that spikes from the fire, from the cauldron. This is what the press and the official authorities presented as an explanation. There aren't conspiracy theories, of course, but we will never find out exactly the circumstances under which the fire was spread. And keep that in mind that 1917 is a very important date for the history of Thessaloniki as a city, because the layout changed completely. It got a more European and West profile, because until those days, Thessaloniki was an old medieval city with synagogues and mosques and Christians and those neighborhoods around those religious centers, alleys like mazes. It had a completely different aspect and appearance. So if you go further up, you will see that old Thessaloniki is still surviving. Down here and close to the waterfront, we have Thessaloniki as it was designed by Ebrar in 1917. And this square in particular, he wanted to give a more European air to that square. That's why we have the colonnades, all those shops. It used to be residences at the upper levels. Now it's all businesses and offices. And there are some cinemas, theaters. It was the cultural uh, center of Thessaloniki, the cultural heart as well, named after the philosopher of the area, Aristotle, of course. And this square has been used in an advertisement of an alcoholic brand. I don't know if you're familiar with Smirnoff vodka. Google it, Smirnoff, Thessaloniki. And they have an aerial view of the square that literally seems like a vodka, a Smirnoff vodka bottle. And they use the square for their advertisement. Let's go this way, please. Establishing committees and giving funds for the relocation and the reestablishment of those families, of course, with the help of the local community. So we know the numbers because the Muslim priest said that I have like 10 mosques destroyed that corresponds to 1,000 people. The Jewish rabbi said I have like 50 synagogues destroyed, and so on and so on. This is how the priest. Let's get to that flower market detour.
So not many Muslims here now.
No,
No,
almost none.
because of the war.
Because of a mandatory exchange of populations in 1922.
Okay.
So let's stop here.
Smells good.
Thessaloniki, the flowers and the bakeries and the pastry shops, it's always a colorful and vibrant city. This is a corner that, well, it's one of my favorites in the city, to be honest. It is called Luludadika, and it means the flower market. And now you may see one or two benches that sell flowers, but you have to imagine that until the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, I would say, that whole square was filled with flower shops. So this is how shopping was organized in Thessaloniki and in Athens, I would say. But in Thessaloniki, you can still see some reminders and memories of those old shopping districts. So depending on the product that you were looking for, you would go to a specific market or to a specific street. So if you were looking for flowers, for seeds, for branches of trees, for pots, that would be your destination. And the monument that you see next to that flower market is a Turkish bath, hammam, of 16th century after Christ. You know, the Ottomans arrived here in the north part of Greece already in 14th century. So by 1360s, 1370s, this area is conquered by the Ottomans, the medieval Turks. I remind you that Constantinople, Istanbul, the fall of Istanbul is 1453. And this area is liberated in 1913. This is when it officially becomes part of Greece. Whereas Athens, Corinth, the islands that we're going to visit, they were already liberated with the War of Independence in 1821, 1828. But not the whole part of present-day Greece. Let's excuse me, I think that's the drive. Παρακαλώ. Είμαστε στο Μοδιάνο, δεν έχουμε μπει ακόμα για να βγούμε στο καπάνι. Ευχαριστώ. Ναι, είμαστε στη Βασιλέως Ηρακλείου, στα Λουλουδάδικα είμαι. Ωραία. I apologize for those breaks, but it's the taxi driver, so I have to give him instructions too of where to go. That's why, that's the only phone call I will have to attend. So Greece, and I think I have a map. I can send it in WhatsApp. Not all provinces of Greece were liberated and incorporated to the Greek state at the same time. There were a series of political events and wars. And little by little, Greece got the size and the area that has nowadays, with the last incorporation being the Southeast Aegean Sea, the island of Patmos, that we're going to visit in 1948. This is the last territory that we inscribed to our country. That's why here in Thessaloniki, we are talking about an Ottoman presence from 14th up to 1913, 14th century up to 1913. That's almost 500, 600 years. And there are several Ottoman monuments, mosques, hammams, bezestens, the Ottoman marketplaces, that are a reminder of that presence, of the Ottoman presence here. They're not in operation, of course, anymore. They're just monuments. And next to that hammam, that Turkish bath, we have this flower market. And now there are several cafes, and it's a nice a spot just to sit and relax while you're shopping and walking here in the city center. And Kalimera. And let's go and enter the marketplace Modiano. I just wanted to show you. Will see those that different sidewalk. Some of you are stepping on those stripes. This is for the people that have visibility issues and difficulties. So it's a straight line, and whenever it changes direction, you have dots or squares, so people can know that they have to turn. Let's go at that marketplace. Τα έδειξα. Εδώ μέχρι τη γωνία. So we will now enter a very modern marketplace. It is called Modiano, Agora of Modiano. You see there are several shops and small businesses around. That's why it's a very, very busy place. And before we get into the Agora, the presence of the police there is justified by the presence of a synagogue. Generally, that was the Jewish area. So we can, when we study the ethnical and religious minorities of communities of Thessaloniki, hello? Then we can find three big groups and one smaller ethnical groups and religious groups. So we have the Christians, the Jewish, and the Muslims. Those are the big three. And then you have the West Catholics, the European Catholics. So based on the location of the religious buildings, the corresponding neighborhood would evolve around it. We can generalize saying that near the harbor, so that way, there was a neighborhood of the few European Catholics. Most of those were French, Austrians, Spanish, Italians. They were here to conduct businesses, as Thessaloniki has diachronically been a very important port here in the East Mediterranean. And that's why there is an active Catholic church in the city, reminding us there are very few Catholics, mostly Albanians and Polish here in the city, not Greeks in our case here. So the Westerners lived that way. Then close to the harbor and in that area where we are, we had the Jewish people. Because the density of the synagogues was mostly here. That's why there's the Jewish museum nearby. There is a Jewish synagogue here as well. And the marketplace that we're gonna walk through now was built by a Jew in the 1920s. So how the Jewish community here exists already since 3rd and 2nd century BC. It is the Greek branch of Judaism that we call Romagnotes, that they speak Greek, they have Greek habits, Greek folk traditions, but their religion is Judaism. In 1492, we have the Jews expelled from Spain and Portugal by Isabella. And we're talking about Ottoman Empire days. The Ottoman Empire is the one that invites those expelled Jews to settle here because they realized how good merchants they were and that some monopolies were in their hands, in the hands of the Jewish merchants. Thessaloniki, being a very big harbor, like an international harbor for the standards of those days, is the one that welcomes, is the city that welcomes the biggest part of those expelled Jews. So we have the Sephardic, the Spanish speaking, the Ladino Jews arriving here in 1492. And they stay until the 1910s, 1920s, with the last, let's say, tragedy being the Holocaust. Thessaloniki was heavily influenced by the Holocaust. So in that period, from 1500s to 1900s, early 1900s, although we are talking about a city in Greece under the Ottoman rule, the most active gear of the community, economy-wise, culture-wise, it's the Jewish community. It's a Thessaloniki is a very interesting amalgam to study because you have the coexistence of those three different ethnic and religious groups. So the Jews develop a city into their city, blended harmonically with the rest. We're talking about dozens of synagogues. More than 50% of the population were Thessalonian Jews, and it was only with the fire of 1917 that they saw their synagogues and big part of their neighborhoods destroyed, that they started leaving to other parts of Europe and the US. So for about 400 years, 300, 400 years, the press was in their hands, commerce was in their hands, cultural institutions, educational institutions was in their hands. And there are several people in the world that are descendants of Thessalonian Jews, and everybody knows of, like the Dassault family of the airplanes, Dassault, Nicolas Sarkozy, and I forgot there was a very famous hairstylist and hairdresser. He was very innovative. I will remember. Sassoon, yes, Vidal Sassoon. Yeah, thank you very much. And many more people that are descendants of Thessalonian Jews of that Sephardic branch, because of course there was the Ashkenazim of Central and North Europe and the Greek Romagnotes Jews that they have eternally been here. So when we study the Bible and we see the Jewish presence in the Bible in Greece, it's that Greek branch that existed here since 3rd century BC, with the oldest remains of a synagogue being located on the island of Delos, dating back to 2nd century BC. So the Jewish community has a very big and very impactful presence in certain areas of Greece. So that was the Jewish quarter, and that's why we have this marketplace here called Modiano. It was started being constructed in 1922, finished in 1925. 1929, it officially opened with more than 100 shops. It fell in decline in the 80s, 90s, early zeros because the shopping habits changed and people didn't go that much to marketplaces anymore, but to shopping malls and the big supermarkets. And there was an attempt, a private initiative with the collaboration of the municipality to reopen it and make it a gastro destination. That's why you will see inside it's a marketplace, but it is very sophisticated with deli products and exclusive delicacies. Let's go through, let's walk through. Of course.
A lot of the hotels are going to the United States now. Instead of like a big restaurant buffet, they have a sequel.
Really?
Yeah.
No, here that's not something that you would find in the facilities of a hotel. But it's interesting to see that because we will cross the street and we will enter a traditional marketplace, what Modiano family introduced to Thessaloniki was those galleries with where you have your marketplace under a roof. Because normally it was just benches and stalls here and there, like an open farmers market. And we still have that once a week at every neighborhood. Yeah, it's Christina Aguilera's background, music background. Not traditional. But this is what Modiano Market, that was its innovation, that we have a gallery where you have all shopping activities under one place. We cannot say that the Modiano market has been a successful attempt, to be honest. And lately there has been discussions of what should be done in order to revive it. That's why you see several shops that are closed. The rents are extremely high for the shop owners, and the demand was not the one that we expected. The locals, it's more of an attraction than a place where the locals can go and buy their things. It's the high prices and it's the exclusivity and the finesse of the products. They are like matcha tea or I don't know, the finest of the milks or things that you do not use on a daily basis. It's not things that you have in your fridge. Only once in a while. That's why we are thinking of how we can reorganize the Modiano market in order to become an alive place, because it's beautiful to take photos, it's beautiful to look at the shops around, but it's not something that it's part of the city life. It's that's the complicated issue.
To pay for that.
Follow me this way in order to see another marketplace.
John's that fish market.
Our friends went to they're cool. The dogs will stop the traffic.
Something smells fishy. Since Don wasn't here, I thought I would. Wow.
Not chilly.
So this is how an actual marketplace looks like in Greece. And you can see that there is a striking contrast between the two. There was an empty but very sophisticated and very deli place, and here it's the actual marketplace. It's the fish market. It's cross-shaped. So it's the fish market that way, meat somewhere between, and then you have the vegetables. This is the driver, I guess. No, she's not the driver. Um, so first of all, the prices, please. In some big grocery stores, they do. But the truth is that the Greeks, we will prefer to do our grocery shopping, at least the many things, the big quantities, and the meat and the fish of the week at the local market or at the farmers market that will come to our place once a week. So where I live, it's on Mondays, and there's a street. The traffic is closed on a side street, and all the benches and stalls are there, and we buy directly from the producers. But there's always the central marketplace at any city. So there's in Athens, in Thessaloniki it's here. In Athens it's close to the old town, the Acropolis. And if, for example, the Easter lamb, we're gonna buy it from the local marketplace. At the supermarket, we get the things that we need on the spot, something that we've forgotten, or like shampoos and cheese and milk, yogurt, stuff like that. But we will definitely prefer the marketplace, that type of marketplace, if we have something close to us. The prices that you see are per kilo for fruit, meat, vegetables, meat, and fish, apart from some big items like lettuce, cauliflower, or watermelon. That's the price per item. But for tomatoes, onions, cucumbers, cherries, grapes that I see, it's all prices per kilo, so that you can compare. This place is called Kapani. It is a Turkish word. Kapan means wheat. It was the wheat market, the flour market of the Thessalonians. So there were several markets, as we've said, specialized in different things. And although it has an Ottoman name, it wasn't just the Ottomans in here. We know that there was a Jewish synagogue in this area because the market continues that way. And there was also a mosque nearby with a religious Islamic school. So you see that they have all basic functions together. Religion, socialization, trade, it's all close to one another. And of course, it didn't mean that if you were a Christian, that you were not able to buy from a Muslim, or if you were a Jewish, that you were not buying something from a Christian. They had also organized their life in that way, based on the day, on the holidays that the corresponding weeks of the Muslims, of the Jewish, and of the Christians have. So day off. So it would be a day off on Saturday for the Jewish people. It would be a day off on Fridays for the Muslims, day off on Sundays for the Christians, and everybody would respect and cope with that situation. So this is a marketplace that you see still survives, is still alive. It was heavily affected by the fire, of course. That's why all this structure, the green structure and the roofs, it's all contemporary. But as a location and as a concept, it is a reminder of the older city of Thessaloniki. We call it Kapani. And there is one more marketplace right across, as you can see. And in between, you can tell by the red columns, it's Aristotle Square. So we're just 3 blocks from the hotel. And imagine it's a 5-star hotel integrated in the heart of the city, where the heart is beating. Let's continue further up this way. I don't know if there's something that you'd like to ask me in the meantime, something that caught your attention from the products that are sold around. You see, we have all different types of meat: chicken, lamb, goat meat, veal, pork, yes.
The culture of men and secret do they sell? Are they separate, like if they're Jewish or?
Nowadays there aren't. There's only cultural, ethnic and religious group. It's the Christians. There are very few Jewish people, about 1,000. That's why there are a couple of synagogues here in Thessaloniki, but before the Holocaust it was 45,000 people, and before the fire there were more than 100,000. So now it's all very. You see that there is a cohesion around you, because everybody speaks Greek, the vast majority are Christians, the cultural background is the same. If you were here before 1917, you would tell the difference. That there were sections, so the Ottomans at the upper levels, the Christians closer to the White Tower, the Jewish closer to the harbor. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't a mosque somewhere here, or that there wasn't a synagogue somewhere up there where the Muslims were. It's a more generalization, but it was literally a multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multi-religious city. Please.
Have you been to Jerusalem?
No, Jerusalem, not yet.
Yes.
The old city divided into ghettos. The Armenians, the Jewish.
But ghettos.
Ghetto.
But is it? I mean, is it a very clear and strict distinction?
Pretty clear.
Because here it wasn't that clear.
Okay.
So in that area that you see, Καλημέρα.
Καλημέρα σας, κυρία.
Τι κάνετε?
Πολύ καλά εσείς.
Μια χαρά. So all that whole area, you would find both Jewish and Muslims together and Christians. So that's why I highlighted the word ghetto. We're not talking about ghettos in Thessaloniki of the 1700s, 1800s. There, you can create a rough geographical dissemination. So Christians that way, Muslims up that way, but nothing like a ghetto or a wall dividing those.
It's only gone since the beginning of time.
Καλημέρα σας, κυρία. Τι κάνετε? Πολύ καλά εσείς. Παρακαλώ, καλημέρα σας, κυρία.
You can create a rough geographical dissemination. But nothing like a ghetto or a wall. It's named after the Ignatian Way that we talked about yesterday, because it is actually placed over the ruins and over the route of that authentic Egnatia, the Ignatian Way of 2nd century BC. That's why it's the heart of the city, the Ignatian Way, and it was the big avenue, the Cardo Maximus, the central avenue of the Roman city, having two gates, one and one at the two exits, the Golden Gate and the West Gate, and definitely Paul, arriving from Philippi via Apollonia and Amphipolis, he definitely walked on the Ignatian Way in order to access and enter the city. We will cross the street together. We will wait for the taxi, and then we will cross the street. There is a traffic light. Let me see where. We'll find where the traffic light is so that we can cross. Part of Aristotle Square right now, and we encounter one of the most famous Byzantine monuments. Is under restoration work. When we talk about Byzantine, we're talking about the successor of the Eastern Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire was split in two in early 4th century AD by Theodosius, early 4th century. The west side stayed with Rome and roughly became Catholic Europe, what Catholic Europe is nowadays. And the east side, mostly the Balkans, present-day Turkey, that became automatically the Eastern Roman Empire. And a new capital had to be found, and there were two cities as contestants. One was Thessalonica, because of its location, because of its harbor, because it was already a very privileged city by the Romans. And the second was Byzantium, which was the east end of the Ignatian Way. Byzantium lies exactly on the Bosphorus Strait in between Black Sea and Aegean Sea and Marmara Sea, and it has a slightly better location than Thessalonica. That's why Byzantium won, and the choice was made by Constantine the Great, the first emperor to be baptized Christian, and it became Constantinople and Istanbul consequently in 15th century. That's so when we talk about the Byzantine Empire, practically we're talking about the Eastern Roman Empire. They would call themselves Romans, Romania, here not Romania as the country that you may know. So Byzantine is a term that we have invented in modern days in order to name this empire. They would never call themselves Byzantines. And the Byzantine Empire stayed, when we generalize giving the dates from 4th century AD up to 1453 when you have the fall of Constantinople. But this area was already occupied by the Ottomans much earlier, like a century earlier. And we have other places in Greece, like the island of Crete, which were already occupied by the Venetians from early 13th century after the Fourth Crusade until 1669, for example. So you cannot give a standard date that can apply on all regions and all provinces of Greece. You have to examine each province separately, because at some places you have a longer Venetian rule and a shorter Ottoman presence. In other places, like here, you have no Venetian presence, but only Ottoman rule. In other places, it's only Venetian, then it's British, then it's Russian, but no Ottomans. It depends on the place. So this is one of the best examples of Byzantine architecture. It is a church of 1028, 11th century AD, dedicated to Virgin Mary, Panagia, Chalkeon, as you can see on the brown sign. Chalkeon means of the coppersmiths. So we know that this part of the agora, this part of the market area of medieval Thessaloniki, was where you would find the coppersmiths all located. And that's why that church here corresponds to them, to their profession. And when it became a mosque, as soon as the Ottomans occupied the city, automatically all those Christian monuments, they were converted to Muslim mosques. Still, we see that it was a mosque of Kazanzilar, that is the same as coppersmith, but in Turkish. So they kept the name, they kept the identity, because that was the place where they would also buy any copper things they needed. As you see, it's under restoration work. It's one of the, as we've said, best examples of Byzantine architecture we have in town. Let's continue further up this way. It's the agora. And I remind you that an agora is the central square, the marketplace. It's where you find some religious buildings, the commercial activities, you find administrative activities, administration, storage areas. So it was the heart of the core of the city, the heart of the city. The ruins that you see in front of you date primarily from 2nd and 3rd century AD. So they are monuments after Paul's presence here, but we know that they are that the monuments that you see now are nothing else but reconstructions of monuments that already existed here from 1st century BC and 1st century AD. So the layout, monuments that existed here even before Paul's presence. So this is how the Roman agora, the agora would look like in 1st century AD as well. You do not see the agora at its full extent, and you can tell because here you have the colonnade in front of you. You see the bases of columns. You see a couple of columns restored as well and replaced. And we know that by the north side, we're by the south, by the north side, right across, there would be something equivalent to what you see here, so a full square, a full rectangle. The other part of the agora practically lies under the street that you see in front of you. And we decided, the archaeologists have decided to expropriate the area little by little, because practically you have to tear down a whole city in order to reveal what Thessaloniki has to reveal. We excavated, when we did the excavations for the metro, the subway that it recently opened, you cannot imagine the quality and the quantity of the antiquities that were found.
Oh my goodness.
Even 7 meters down to the ground, 10 meters down to the ground, layer by layer. Ottoman Thessaloniki, Byzantine, early Christian, Roman, Greek. So it is, you have to make a decision and choose the plots that will be excavated, but you cannot fully excavate an area. Please.
This is probably a really dumb question, but at some point all that had to be covered up. How was it covered?
How was it covered?
How? Like, come along with it, a natural effect that covered it?
Did you all hear the question? How did they?
Why are there layers? They were built on top of each other.
There are two ways. When, in the case of Philippi, for example, it's abandonment, so nature does its work.
Right.
With the silts and the sediments from the water and the streams flowing, you have the slope sliding, the soil sliding from the slope, earthquakes. Here, it's all man-made. And we have this archaeological consciousness now that we appreciate what is old, what is important. But up to the early 1900s, the truth is that the older monuments were easy quarries. Direct quarries, so they would, even the Greeks, but many other people, they would not easily appreciate something old. For them it was old-fashioned, it was aged, so instead of preserving it, you can get its marble, you can get its clay tiles, you can get its furniture, whatever, and use it for your own purposes. So there has been fires, there has been earthquakes, of course, but the layers that we find, you cannot draw a straight line and say this is 5th century, this is 4th century. That never happens. You see that you have let's say a 5th century layer, and embedded into the walls, into the buildings, you have something from 6th century. So it is slightly raised up. And then again, in the 6th century buildings, you see something from 7th century embedded into them. And this is how the city raises. When we're talking about Athens, Thessalonica, Sparta, places that where the location of the city never changed, the Thessalonians had always been here. They didn't move to other places. Unlike Corinth, for example, we will be in Corinth. Ancient Corinth, medieval Corinth, and modern Corinth is 3 different places. That's why you just have to clear a few meters of dirt and you get to the ruins. Here you have to, if you clear these buildings, then you get to the ruins of 18th century. So you have to register them, take photos, and then extract them carefully, because it's part of the excavation, and then move deeper and deeper. So it's 2 different scenarios. But yes, they all had to be unearthed.
So man-made, they just decided to go, hey, we're going to build over this.
Yes, when the needs changed. You have periods where the situation, the conditions are poorer or wealthier. That means that if you're poor, you're not gonna go to the quarry, you're gonna get what you need from what is already cut and polished. If you're wealthy, you're gonna go to the quarry because it's a way to show off that I have the money to bring my own material from scratch. So it depends on the period, but it's always layer above layer, and not necessarily a man-made catastrophe. It's just a reuse of the same building over and over again.
Constantine,
Please.
was this below? Was it a 2-level, or is this an older portion that was built on top?
This is, no, that was a semi-basement. Let's say it was, so the ground level is the level of the square, as you see, and that was like a crypt. We do have a crypt here, and those were warehouses, yes, storage places. And these square plans that you see, those correspond to workshops. So someone could rent, if you were a merchant, you could rent a place, give that rent to the local authorities, and you conducted your businesses into that workshop. And you can even see the sidewalk. This is the original pavement, so that was a street here. And all those places, they faced that part of the street. There were other monuments that faced the agora. So for example, across the opposite side, by the right side, where you see those white gates, there is an odeum, like a small amphitheater. The sittings are replaced, and that was used for theatrical performances, but also for political gatherings. 2nd and 3rd century AD. And there was also the mint next to it, because Thessalonica, as Philippi, were cities that had the privilege to mint coins for the Roman Empire. Not all cities could do so. We had the imperial mint here as well. And regarding Paul, I see that the other group has arrived. One last comment, but we will discuss further on that. It seems that there is a pattern. When Paul visits a city, at least in the second missionary journey, there is a pattern of agora, synagogue. That's the two first places that he goes. Synagogue, because he has that Jewish background, so he first wants to send the message to the people of his background. And the agora, a marketplace, a central square, is the best place in order to understand the vibes of a city, because at the agora you're gonna see merchants, you're gonna see politicians, you're gonna see passers-by, you're gonna see philosophers, any type of person and any quality of a person is at the agora. So if you wanna understand how you, what's the yes, municipal police. So if you want to understand what's the mentality of those people, how you're going to handle with them and cope with them, you have to go to the agora. Even nowadays, you sit at a square at a coffee shop and you observe people around and you get an idea of how the locals move and act. Many scholars believe that he did the same thing, because we examine, we have this repetition. He did that in Philippi, not at a synagogue, because there wasn't a synagogue, but you see, place of worship and agora. He does that in Thessalonica. He does that in Athens. He repeats that thing in Corinth, agora and synagogue. So it seems that there is a pattern on that during at least the first days or weeks of his stay, in order to understand and socialize properly with the locals. That's why it's not accidental that at the agora, the word agora is mentioned in chapter 16 for Thessalonica, or 17. I think it's early 17. We have the word agora mentioned for the Thessalonians. That's why I told you it's the only place I can take you in Thessaloniki that's definitely associated to Paul. There's that word agoreos in the authentic text.